Hillside is a charming neighborhood in Westfield, New Jersey, known for its beautiful homes, tree-lined streets, and family-friendly environment. It offers residents a suburban feel with easy access to Westfield's vibrant downtown area, excellent schools, and numerous parks. The community is characterized by its strong sense of togetherness and convenient proximity to New York City, making it a highly desirable place to live. In this tranquil, upper-class bedroom community stood a large home known as Breeze Knoll, nestled off Hillside Avenue. It was here that John Emil List, an affluent and successful accountant, lived with his mother, wife, and 3 children. John provided his family not only with material wealth, but also strived to grant them spiritual wealth, being a devout Christian and a pillar of the local Lutheran church. While this might have seemed like the suburban dream life, John saw it unraveling. Beneath the surface, the family harbored dark secrets that outsiders never saw. Helen List, John's wife, was a distant relative of his and nearly blind from a bout with syphilis contracted during a previous marriage. Bound to her home, she was the only woman John was ever intimate with. Their marriage had been a shotgun one, driven by a false pregnancy scare. This relationship was far from happy, and John felt a growing resentment towards Helen. As John watched his carefully constructed life crumble, he was haunted by the shadows within Breeze Knoll, revealing a hidden turmoil behind the facade of affluence and piety. Besides the family's closeted skeletons, John was failing economically and could not stop his own plummet into lower tax brackets. The Lists had been living beyond their means already before John found his accounting job in peril. He had left his vice presidency at the firm and began selling insurance in a frantic effort to pay the bills. Besides all of this, his 3 children were all teenagers, and one in particular, 16-year-old Patricia Marie, was dabbling with marijuana and theater, both of which John viewed as rather unchristian. John saw his perfect life unraveling and decided it was better to remove his family from Earth rather than have them go through a life of poverty and sin. On November 9, 1971, John put what was a carefully calculated plan into action. A few weeks before, he had ordered a family meeting where he cryptically asked them each what type of funeral they would want. In the days prior, he had mailed notes to friends, co-workers, and teachers of his various family members, offering up cover stories as to why they wouldn't be seen in coming weeks. John started off that fateful day by dropping the kids off at school. When he returned around 9 a.m., Helen was in their kitchen having a breakfast of toast and coffee. When he entered the room, she said, "Good morning," and her husband shot her in the back of the head with a .22 caliber pistol. He then ran up to the attic of the house, where his 84-year-old mother Alma's living quarters were located. After a final kiss, he shot her in the back of the head as well. He went out, completed some chores, and when he got home, he sat down and ate lunch. He didn't consider stopping the killing over this meal. Later in the day, he picked up Patricia from school. They entered the house together, and without warning, John shot her in the back of the head as well. He next executed his youngest son, 13-year-old Freddie. So far, John had rushed through relatively clean execution-style killings, but all did not go as smoothly with his last remaining son, 15-year-old John Jr. realized what his father was going to do to him, and caught on to his father's evil intentions before the senior List could surprise him. Subsequently, after the first shot, John Jr. was not dead. He fell to the ground and involuntarily jerked around. John stood over his son's writhing body and shot him in the heart over and over again with both the .22 and a 9mm he was carrying. List meticulously arranged his wife's and children's bodies in the estate's large ballroom, laying them all on sleeping bags in the shape of a T. He left notes accompanying each body explaining why he had killed them. His mother's body remained in the attic, with a note stating she was too heavy to move. Other notes were addressed to his pastor, Reverend Raywinkle, and employer, complete with finalized files to avoid inconveniencing his boss. Reflecting on the act of killing, one of List's notes read, "I'm sure some will ask, how could anyone do such a horrible thing? My answer is that it wasn't easy." Despite the murders occurring on November 9th, List had meticulously covered his tracks, delaying the discovery of the bodies until December 7th. Patricia's drama teacher, Mr. Ed Iliano, visited the house to check on his missing student and discovered the bodies in the ballroom, faces covered with cloth, while church music played over the home's intercom. His frantic call to the police revealed the chilling scene. "My God, you'd better send help out here," he exclaimed. "There's been a mass murder. There's bodies all over the place." Police launched an immediate manhunt for List. With 5 bodies, murder weapons, and written confessions in hand, they scoured for clues. List's car was found at Kennedy Airport, containing papers and identification. He had orchestrated the murders and his escape meticulously, vanishing without a trace before the full horror of his deeds became known. 17 years after the crime, investigators faced nothing but dead ends in the case of John List. Then, on May 21, 1989, a pivotal moment arrived when his story was featured on the popular television show America's Most Wanted. The program included a reenactment of the murders, a photograph of List, and a sculpted bust depicting his likeness after nearly 2 decades on the run. That same night, Robert P. Clark attended a church function in Midlothian, Virginia. Unbeknownst to him, acquaintances at the event were dialing into the hotline set up by America's Most Wanted, identifying Clark as their quiet friend and neighbor, who they now realized was the fugitive responsible for the brutal murders years earlier. Simultaneously, calls poured in from Golden, Colorado, linking John List, the notorious accountant-turned-fugitive, to Robert Clark, a local French fry cook who had recently relocated to Virginia. Swiftly, the FBI moved in and apprehended Robert P. Clark, who at the time was leading a seemingly ordinary suburban life with a family. Initially denying any connection to the List case, Clark eventually admitted his true identity under pressure from his lawyer, seeking to mitigate potential legal consequences. During his trial, defense attorneys attempted to portray List as a man driven to insanity by the religious pressures imposed by his parents, but the jury remained unconvinced. The calculated nature of List's crimes, evident from his meticulous planning and lack of remorse, led to his conviction. On April 12, 1990, a New Jersey judge condemned John List as
eternally synonymous with concepts of selfishness, horror, and evil. He is a man who could coldly, calculatingly, and cunningly conceive and carry out a cowardly plan to assassinate each of his 3 children,
sentencing him to life in prison. As List spent his remaining days in a New Jersey correctional facility, he clung to hope for redemption, praying daily for acceptance into heaven and envisioning a reunion with his family in the afterlife. When we get to heaven, he mused, they'll either forgive me or not fully comprehend what happened. I believe we'll enjoy each other's company, just as we did in better times here on earth. On March 21, 2008, John List succumbed to pneumonia while serving his sentence in prison. The infamous figure known as the Boogeyman of Westfield had finally passed away. But what became of the List home? Shortly after the murders, the List mansion faced a mysterious fate. It burned down. Ironically, the ballroom of the mansion housed a rare and valuable Tiffany glass ceiling, estimated at $100,000 at the time. If List had sold it, he could have settled his debts. Instead, the priceless ceiling shattered in the blaze. Built in 1885 by Augustus Whitkey, the mansion boasted 3 floors and 18 rooms, including the opulent ballroom where the Tiffany ceiling once dazzled. It stood as the most expensive home in Westfield at the time of its construction. The List family, John List, his mother, his wife, and their 3 children, resided in the mansion from 1965 to 1971. Struggling with financial strain, they couldn't afford to heat or fully furnish the sprawling estate. The mansion's demise came swiftly in August 1972, engulfed in flames under suspicious circumstances. Fire inspectors noted the fire as suspicious, and just 3 weeks later, the mansion was demolished. Arson was suspected, though the culprits were never apprehended. The mansion, valued at $100,000 in tax records, excluding the Tiffany ceiling, became a curiosity for onlookers until its untimely end. Today, a new home stands on the property, marking the site where tragedy and mystery once overshadowed the quiet streets of Westfield.